All right, Financial Algebra, here is your video to help you with the weekly assignment. And this is for April 20th through 24th. And the good thing about the rest of the year for us is it's all review now. Everything weekly you're going to be doing is stuff that we did in first semester or earlier this second semester. For those of you that transferred in, you'll be learning this from the first time, but it's a lot of review stuff, so bear with. The review for Unit 1 and 2 is this week. Unit 1 and Unit 2 review. The big thing about the Unit 1 review, if you remember, we did mean, median, mode. We did a little bit of range, variance, standard deviation. We did that z-score. And then in Unit 2, we did the interest, simple interest and the compound interest. So what I'm going to do for the notes today is just kind of walk you through again how to do each part, remember. So example 1 is just talking about when they give us a list of numbers, finding the mean, the median, the mode, the range. So if you remember, the mean is the average. You add up all the numbers. So you take all these numbers, you'd add them up. And in this case, for mean, we divide by 13 because there's 13 numbers in our list. And that's how you do the mean. Add them all up and divide. The median, remember, stands for the middle. And you have to put them in order. So if you look at the list originally, the list is not in order originally. We have to put them in order. Even though you don't for the mean, you do for the median. So you might as well put them in order right off the bat. Once you put them in order, remember the median is the middle. If it's an odd list, that means there's just one number in the middle, like this one. 7's in the middle. You'll know it's in the middle because you have the same amount to the left and to the right. So that's how you find the middle. If the list is ever even, so this was 13 numbers. But if the list was 14 numbers or any even, then there would be 2 in the middle. And remember, the median, when there's 2, you take the 2 that are in the middle, average them. So you add them and cut them in half. The mode is which number comes up the most. Now, it doesn't mean which ones repeat. If you look at your list, there's 3 7s and there's 2 8s. 3 7s wins because 3 is the most. So the mode is just 7 because there's 3 of them. And then the range, biggest number, take away the smallest. 14 take away 1 would be 13. Example 1. Example 2. This was the one, if you remember, when we did variance and standard deviation, we had to set up this chart. If you remember, this chart told us everything we needed to do. So what they do is they give us a list of numbers. To find the variance and standard deviation, first to find the variance, that's where we have to fill in this table. We have to use the mean, subtract each number from the mean and square it. And then remember, add up all those squares. So if you look at this, here's the value, the mean. It tells you what to do. Value minus mean, subtract it, and then squared. So this last column is always positive because you're squaring. Negative times a negative. Calculators, you got to put it in parentheses. But basically, if you take a look at this and you remember practicing this in the fall, all you do is follow that chart and list. So once we square them all, then it's the average of those squares. So we add them all up and divide by 7 because there were 7 numbers. That comes out to be 17.96. That's what they call the variance. And the variance is basically the average of the squares. Now, the standard deviation, all we have to do is take that answer and square root it. Not square it, make it bigger. Square root, you punch this button of 17.96, comes out to be about 4.2. 4.2 would be the standard deviation. So remember, variance and standard deviation, just follow that chart, pretty straightforward. Z-score. If you remember Z-score was actually, you guys were really good with Z-score. If you remember, the Z-score formula is where you take the value that you're looking for, you subtract the mean, and you divide it by the standard deviation. It's a real short little formula. And what they're going to do is they're going to give us either all the numbers and ask us for the Z-score, or they're going to give us a Z-score and ask us, okay, then what's that kid's real height or something like that. So in this particular example, in the notes, they tell you 62 inches. They want to know what's the Z-score for 62 inches. So that's the value, 62 inches. Then the mean, you subtract the mean. Well, they told us in the mean's 56. That's where the mean goes. Standard deviation, they said, was 3, goes on the bottom. 62 minus 56 is 6, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. Standard deviation is 2. That means that 2 numbers away from the mean is the average of that, or the standard deviation, or the normal distance away, too. Now, if they tell us the Z-score, and then they ask us what's this person's actual height, that's the value we don't know from the formula. So this time they told us the kid's Z-score was negative 0.5. The mean is still 56. the standard deviation is still 3. But if you remember, when we look like a fraction, we got to get rid of the fraction. So we multiply the 3 over to the left side. That negative 0.5 times 3 is negative 1.5. And then we solve for x. So if we were subtracting the mean 56, we're going to do the opposite and add it. And x comes out to be about 54.5. So a kid who is 54.5 inches tall would have a z-score of negative 0.5. Now, what are all these z-scores and things used for? On the normal curve, and if you remember the bell curve, that normal distribution, when you're given a normal distribution, there's a chart, and the chart allows you to figure out what the average or what the percent is of how many people are either more than or less than the value of that z-score. For example, if you remember, I gave you a bunch of printouts in the fall, and it had a big chart, and you had to find the z-score, and then you went to the chart and you changed the chart into a percent. So when you look at the homework this week, I put the chart on there for you. So you find the z-score first. Once you find the z-score, you go to the chart. And when you're looking at the chart, you have to remember, use the decimals to find the chart. And when you find the decimal on the chart, that's the percent. So 0.9772, that would be 97.7%. So remember our 2 decimal thing, right? But on this one, they didn't ask you what the percent was. We used the z-score to find the percent. Then they said, all right, well, how many kids? Once you know the percent, you times it by the number of kids. So if they said there was 220 kids on this field trip, you do the percent, 97.7% of 220 kids. We do our decimal thing, times it by the 220 kids, and it comes out to be about 215 kids that would be affected by that one there. All right. All right, the last two, simple interest and compound interest. If you remember, I equals PRT, simple interest formula. The thing about the simple interest formula is they can ask you to either find the interest. That means they gave you the principal, the rate, and the time. Remember, when we're doing our formula, the rate is always the percent as a decimal. That's our 2 decimal thing that we've done all year. Remember, it's not 1 decimal, it's always 2, and you have to do that when you change the percent to actually use it in a math problem. So, problem 1, they give you the P, the R, the T. All you do is change them all, change the rate to a decimal, times them together. Pretty straightforward. Then they might ask you to figure out some of these other pieces. So remember, if they're asking you to find the R, you still start with the same I equals PRT, but you can rearrange it to get the other letter by itself. So if you're trying to get the R by itself, divide the P and the T over to this side. So this is the formula you could use. It's the same one, but this is now isolated for your rate R. So you plug in all the numbers and you get your decimal, move it over your 2 places. So it's like 5.55. We rounded to about 5.6. Now, once again, you're going to start with the I equals PRT every time and then just rearrange it. So this one, if they want you to find the P, this time we divide that I equals PRT, divide the R and the T over, so we could use this formula. When using this formula now, plug everything in, you end up with about $4,545.45. So all of them, if it says simple interest, you're always using the I equals PRT, and then you can simply rearrange the formula depending on what you're looking for. Now, the big difference is when we go to the compound interest. Compound interest is one of the 2 formulas you guys didn't like. When we do the loan payment one, that's the one you guys really didn't like. But for this one, there's a powers in here and stuff. Once again, I hope that at this point we've been doing so many. Here's the formula. B, which stands for the balance of your bank account, equals P, the principal, times 1 plus the rate divided by N to the NT power. Remember, N is the number of compoundings. So we made a list of what do they mean. Annually, once a year. Semi-annually, twice a year. Quarterly, 4 times a year. Monthly, 12 times. Weekly, 52. Daily, 365. So they'll tell you, hey, it's compounded daily. You use 365. Compounded quarterly. You use 4. So the compounding is the N that goes in 2 places. T is the years, which we used before. R is the rate. You have to do your percent as a decimal thing, always. So if you remember the steps for this one, it's just go slow. It's all calculator work. Go slow. First, change the rate to the percent. So it was 4.5%. We would change it to 0.045. Step 2, replace all the different values. So look, 4 is the compoundings because it said quarterly. If it says quarterly, that would be 4. So both of those powers are going to end up being, the N is 4 in both for compoundings. 10 years, the T is 10. P, the principal out front, $5,000 we deposited. So 5,000 is the P. So first thing we do is we always divide the fraction inside first. If you divide the fraction and then add it plus 1, look, it says 1 plus divide the fraction plus 1, divide, then add 1. Then we got to do the power. The 4 and the 10 outside, 4 times 10 is the power of 40. So you have to do 1.01125 to the 40th. You have to do that before you multiply it by the 5,000. So you do the power first to get 1.564. Excuse me. If you got a bigger number than that, you times it by 40 probably. It's a power, not times 40. It's to the 40th power. Then, once you do the power, times it by the $5,000 you put in, this guy's bank account would end up being about $7,820. So that's his balance after 10 years. So in 10 years, he made $2,820 extra bucks in interest by this compounding. So his bank account would be $7,820. He put in $5,000. You could subtract those to figure out how much interest he made. This is review for chapter 1 and 2. Hopefully this stuff we remember pretty good. That's it. Take care.